Hi. So after finishing the reading and the talk by Richard Rothstein for this week and all of those articles, I was not surprised at the content that it put forward. I did take 2 classes last year that covered this a little bit more extensively. It was Poverty, Inequality in U.S. Public Policy with Michelle Miller-Adams, and then Race and Ethnicity with Jen Stewart. Those were both incredible classes. I would recommend. In both classes, we talked a lot about how racism in public policy has resulted in that lasting segregation in urban housing that Rothstein went further into, and then the different impacts that this has on communities that are kept in these lower quality, less funded, and then sometimes explicitly unhealthy, either through exposure to factories or lead in paint and water, as we've seen, and the impacts that this has on communities and children who are living in those neighborhoods. So while I can't speak for my current community, as I just moved here and haven't had a lot of time to really notice very much, I spent about 4 years in Jenison, Michigan, which is a predominantly white Dutch neighborhood. I don't know the specific policies. I haven't been able to research that at all. I'd definitely be interested in doing that, but I do know that there is a lack of minority communities in Jenison. It's a lot of white Dutch people, and I know that Dutch heritage and prevalence has definitely had an influence. Jenison is a very small township that was settled by Dutch families, and it has recently become a much more desirable place to live. Housing prices are going up, demand for housing is increasing, and it's changing from that incredibly affordable working class neighborhood that it was when my grandparents first moved there. So I do think that the community, while it's already undergoing change, it would change drastically if housing shares were forced to shift. I think that the culture around diversity and inclusion would definitely be a transition, one that's kind of already going on as more families are moving into Jenison, and less people are the same people that they've expected to see in the same community they've expected to see. So DEI has already become a bit of an issue in Jenison. The high school has had some issues with racism among students in the last few years, which has been not great to see. That is a sign, hopefully, that diversity is increasing in a neighborhood, but that's obviously not a signal or a signpost that you want to see ever. My relationships in high school definitely would have been different. I would have had friendships with students who weren't also white Dutch people. There was only one person of color on my entire cross-country team, and that's where I made the majority of my friendships. So there, already my siblings still go to the same schools that I went to, and they are already having a very different atmosphere than I did. So that is encouraging, even if the resulting racism is incredibly disappointing. But I would be interested in knowing what the contract looked like when my grandparents bought their house. They lived there for almost 35 years. So they were in that house for an extremely long time. I would love to know what the contract was when they originally bought it. Was it under a zoning law at any point in its recent history? Did that contract forbid the previous owners or even my grandparents from selling it to non-white owners? That's something I would really be interested in knowing. And then turning specifically to the video lecture from Rothstein, I was surprised, but I was also not shocked that Justice Roberts was incorrect in his characterization of the housing case. It isn't surprising that when it comes to minority disadvantages in an urban setting, and the government had a lot of complicity in that through public policy, that a federal court wouldn't be able to grasp that full scope, would probably be able to grasp the full scope, but wouldn't actually recognize it as such. But it is shocking that the incredibly high number of similar instances that Rothstein would uncover didn't lead to a more thorough and accurate case from the justices. Just that incredibly high number of cases. I wonder if it was just a lack of publicity about that case, because today you would have a lot of class action lawsuits. You'd have a lot of people joining together to make a really strong case together. So that is extremely interesting to me, that just the prolific number of similar instances didn't lead to a stronger case, and the justice is taking it more seriously. So looking at unanswered questions, my only unanswered question is a really broad one. It would just be how many areas still have those discriminatory laws in effect, are actually actively practicing them, and how to go about recognizing that they're there and then taking action to track the resulting impacts of that, and then hopefully remedy those repercussions.